There will be times when you'll need to run a LINQ query without being sure whether it will find any records in the database. When returning multiple records using the where method, this will simply return an empty collection. But when using the single method, it will cause an exception. In this lesson, you'll write LINQ code that will check whether a single record exists and will only return a result if so. To begin, open the Spark sample file from your sample files folder. And open the code behind file of reports.aspx if it isn't open already. Now you're going to write some code that will return a single record. In lesson 10.3, you used the single method to return a single row of data. If the row of data hadn't existed, it would have caused an exception. Remove all code inside the using statement and add the following code. Customer check customer equals data.customers.single customer lambda customer.customerID equals 99. Now add the following code on the next line. Label report.text equals check customer.customer name. Now view reports.aspx in your browser. An error message appears. This happened because there is no record in the database for customer ID 99, so the single method generated an exception. You could use try and catch to work around this, but it's better to avoid that approach because you can make the code work without causing an exception. You learned about try and catch in lesson 7.6. Close your browser now, and you're going to modify your code to check whether the record exists. Change your call to the single method to single or default. The single or default method works in exactly the same way as the single method, but it will return null if the record doesn't exist, instead of causing an exception. View the page in your browser again, and a different error message appears. This time, it's because the check customer object is null, so the code can't set label report.text to the value of its customer name property. You can fix this with a simple if statement. Close your web browser and surround the label report.text line with the following if statement. If check customer equals null, label report.text equals customer does not exist, else label report.text equals check customer.customer name. This code checks whether the check customer object is null. If the return value is null, the text customer does not exist is displayed instead of the customer name. View the page in your browser again, and this time your code does not cause an exception and instead shows that customer ID 99 does not exist. Close your web browser now. Before ending this lesson, I'd just like to mention the first or default method. The first or default method works in a similar way to the single or default method. First or default returns the first record in a database table, or returns null if the table is empty. The first method would cause an exception if the table was empty. Close Visual Studio now, and you've now completed Lesson 10.6. Check whether a record exists using LINQ.